So Google just censored a video exposing Google censorship. Welcome to 2019, and of course we're going to be talking about the latest information regarding the Project Veritas expose that was just taken down by Google. But we're going to try to cover this story as accurately and as fairly as possible because there are multiple sides of the story here. But it does look like Google is in big trouble, especially with the general public. But now, will this lead to any concrete actions by the U.S. government? Well, I honestly don't think so, and we'll explain why at the end of this video. Now, even though Donald Trump has been what could be characterized as kind of erratic, rash, quick to act full-heartedly, especially when just moments ago Iran and their government officials called the White House, quote, mentally retarded, provoking Donald Trump to threaten them with total obliteration and overwhelming force. And even though Trump has been very audacious with his foreign policy, other than a very few tweets, he has been very mum and silent on this important issue, which surrounds him and the hopes of his re-election for some reason. Now, before we get into that, plus a lot more, I wanted to remind everyone that I will be speaking and participating at the Anarcho Vegas event happening on July 19th to the 21st, which is happening in, guess where? Las Vegas. And if you want to come out to that to hear me and other amazing participants at this event, feel free to get your tickets in the description of this video and use promo code WRC to get 10% off your ticket. Okay, back to this very important story, which looks like it's not going to be ending anytime soon, as Project Veritas is saying that they have other insiders and whistleblowers coming from Google that will be releasing more information to the general public. Now, as we know, Project Veritas has released a series of exposés showing and investigating big tech bias and, of course, manipulation. Their previous video before this latest Google expose was, of course, about Pinterest, having even an employee of Pinterest come forward and talk about how and expose how the adult content section of their website was used to go after political voices, exposing how Pinterest was using the adult content category to censor political speech that they disagreed with. And then that expose was deleted by YouTube and Google from appearing on their platform, which even deleted other users' videos without even notifying them when they were just simply talking about this previous Project Veritas investigation. Now, of course, yesterday we have the latest expose coming out by Project Veritas against Google, which has resulted in them being now suspended by Reddit, which, by the way, also has shown very clear political bias, manipulation, and censorship on their platform recently. And all of this has accumulated to Google now removing the video that was talking about exposing Google censorship, which honestly is raising a lot of eyebrows and concerns, especially from the general public, about them actually proving the bigger point here of censorship. And honestly, this is not a good look for Google, because people are coming forward to saying, hey, we have issues with, censorship, and there should be a discussion around this, and then Google is responding, well, that's censored. And that's terrifying. And as James O'Keefe of Project Veritas alludes to and questions, speculates here, what's next? Are you going to remove news organizations for simply talking about this? Since, of course, in the previous purge, individuals who were simply talking about Project Veritas also had their videos taken down. Over, of course, privacy concerns, which we're going to get into in just a little bit here. And the backdrop of everything that has been happening beforehand is critically important to understand here, because if you look at the online kind of ecosystem, if you look at free speech online, it is in a very dangerous spot. There has been clear bias uncovered, of course, on Twitter. Twitter has been caught using double standards to justify deletion and suppression of political speech that they personally disagree with, shadow banning different accounts, Pinterest using adult blocks for content that they disagree with, YouTube deciding what channels are monetized and demonetized and promoted in the algorithm, Facebook deboosting videos, suppressing news, and of course deleting independent media organizations from their platform like us, our channel, our main page on Facebook, hundreds of thousands of people that we built up for years, gone. Snap of a finger without any justification, rationale, or anything. And I know for damn sure I never violated any of the terms and services, any of the policies, or did anything wrong for them to justify their deletion of all the work, of all the time, of all the blood, sweat, and tears and resources we have put into their platform, building them up from the very beginning because they promised to be an avenue of speech, of communications, and now they're acting like publishers. We're going to get into that in just a little bit as well. But the backdrop, of course, is important here, since many people are pointing to the fact that this seems to be a series of escalations that keep being proven of major bias and manipulation and restrictions of the free speech that individuals have online. There actually also has been an official response by Jen Gani, who is the head of responsible innovation at Google, who responded to, of course, the undercover video of her talking. He's saying that the clips of her talking were, quote, selectively edited and spliced together, distorting her words and the actions of her employer, that these are just, quote, juicy sound bites taken out of context, and that when she was referring to, quote, the next Trump situation, she was specifically, allegedly, according to her in her response, talking about election meddling in the 2016 presidential elections and how she wanted to prevent election meddling, not Donald Trump himself. She also says that she is not a, quote, powerful executive, and that, quote, she is not working to alter the 2020 election. Now, this is important because she is not denying some of those statements, and even said herself that she was using, quote, imprecise language. Since then, she has, of course, gone dark on her social media accounts, deleting her Twitter account and making her Instagram private. But, of course, this response leaves a lot of questions, specifically being if she was talking about election meddling, why did she not just say election meddling? Why did she say the Trump situation, which is kind of vague in general, and that rightfully should be understood here. But she also exposed her own political bias and her stance and where she comes from personally, even praising Elizabeth Warren, but then calling her misguided because Elizabeth Warren is one of the few politicians out there that wants to break up Silicon Valley, break up the monopoly of power and control, huge power and control that these few entities have on our life. She also revealed how Google didn't show up to any congressional hearings in 2018 because they were going to do whatever they wanted it to do anyway. In her official response, this Google executive also says the video contained, quote, debunked conspiracy theories about search results by Google, specifically comparing to what happens on Google when you type in Hillary Clinton's emails compared to Donald Trump emails. And if you watch this video by Project Veritas, it is a very convincing case of manipulation, which sadly, if she's going to make this argument, needs to be proven with evidence. And unless there's some evidence proven here, it's very hard to believe this explanation from the Google executives in this Project Veritas video. She goes on to state what her CEO said, that, quote, we do not bias our products to favor any political agenda, which is, again, just rhetoric here. We need some actual hard-hitting evidence here. And this Google executive was talking about fairness, and if she believes in fairness, it definitely doesn't seem fair that when you type in Hillary Clinton emails, you don't get any results auto-filled for you, especially when everyone has been searching for that specific topic on Google. And a lot of the language used here, even if it wasn't, quote, precise language, which this executive claims, is very damaging. I mean, talking about rigging the machine learning AI system, rigging, of course, search results, misrepresenting search queries, and again, most importantly, also contradicting what was said by Google executives previously before to Congress, which many people are calling perjury. Now, it's also important to understand here, a lot of people are critical of Project Veritas because they used an anonymous source, which they said was needed to be done because this whistleblower didn't want to risk his or her career, which makes sense since the previous whistleblower at Pinterest was fired after releasing information to Project Veritas previously before, not so long ago. But anonymous sources are used with the news publications all the time, and they should be seen with a skeptical eye. Another claim made in the video was that Google was suppressing individuals like Tim Pool and Louder with Crowder. If you look at the analytics and the numbers of Louder with Crowder and, of course, Tim Pool, you could see their numbers going up dramatically, and there is no sign of any suppression. If you look at Tim Pool, there are a lot of recommendations, and there are a number of reasons that I won't get into to why this could be happening or not happening. Market forces are important to also entertain here, but it's an anomaly in the report by and large. Now, one of the most interesting parts of this Google executive when they were speaking unknowingly to Project Veritas was the fact about them talking about congressional hearings that they are ignoring because they know it won't change anything. Specifically, it won't change the minds of the people working at Google. Saying, quote, "We're not going to change our minds," and then calling Elizabeth Warren misguided for trying to break up the big monopolies because they need a major entity to, quote, prevent the next Trump situation. Again, this is very vague and up to interpretations, and you will most likely believe what you want based on your political ideology from this, but it's clear. Google is an extremely powerful entity that can determine the outcomes of election. There have even been major studies proving how if Google manipulates their search algorithms, if Google manipulates their advertisements, if Google manipulates information that people get, they could influence who votes for what candidate. We have previously uncovered how Google and Eric Schmidt were some of the people behind the, quote, fake news PR campaign, which we actually talked about with Eric Schmidt one-on-one, which also importantly here in the context needs to be understood here. This is also the man that was head of Google, the head of Alphabet, and an individual who even personally volunteered himself to Hillary Clinton during the last presidential election when she was running against Donald Trump. To me, the worries and fears of actual election meddling are justified here, and they are terrifying, because if we look at Google as an entity themselves and the vast amount of power and influence that they have, they can soon put themselves in a position, if they are already not in the position already, to be the most powerful and unaccountable entity in the entire world. This is a very big concern and worry, and sadly, something that Donald Trump, honestly, has been dragging his feet on, because Google, Twitter, Facebook, and a lot of other big tech Silicon Valley companies are playing a middle ground lawfully to where, on one hand, when it's convenient for them, they act like they're communication platforms, just like cell phone providers that allow people to communicate with one another, which makes them exempt from the law of what people do on these larger communications platforms. On the other hand, when it's convenient for them, they act like publishers, curating content, deleting users, censoring users, and getting rid of their voice in the public town hall online because they are deeming themselves publishers. And if they are publishers, and if they are publishing information, they could be held liable for whoever posts what on their platform. This is an important case that was proven with the Silk Road case with Ross Ulbricht that we covered before, because he created a website where people allegedly did bad things, and he was held accountable for creating a website where other people did bad things on. Again, allegedly. So if someone does something bad and Google, Facebook, or Twitter publishes it, they could be held accountable if they are publishers. They're playing this middle ground and switching back and forth between these roles, which is creating a situation that only empowers them and creates a huge disservice to everyone else. Now, it's important to understand here, Silicon Valley is the new political power in Washington, as The Guardian states, as they are dominating the lobbyist industry in Washington, D.C. on K Street that many people say have been stifling regulations. And what do you expect from a system of governance where the highest bidder gets to decide the outcome of many people's lives? And this system has been abused by Monsanto, and most likely it's still being abused right now by Google. And for a president that relies on social media as much as he does, for a president that honestly, if it wasn't for social media, would not be elected, for him to sit on the sidelines during this very important evolution of free speech online, and the suppression of it is absolutely mind-boggling and is creating a situation where his re-election is looking less and less possible, with, of course, his biggest supporters usually, not always, usually being censored from the public town halls online. And either the lobbying firm of the Silicon Valley executives is too big, or maybe they may have some dirt on Donald Trump, or maybe Donald Trump just lacks a total understanding of this. Kind of doubtful here. I really don't see any concrete, legitimate steps that Donald Trump can or even will take, and which some would even argue would be the better result here, since government having control of communications may not always end favorable to the general public, and that the free market should decide and incentivize what is popular and what is not, what companies grow, survive, and sustain themselves in an ecosystem that is dependent on people using it. This is one of the reasons I started using Brave, I started using Presearch. But regardless of all this, what do you think is the proper solution here? Let me know in the comment section below. I always look forward to your feedback, your constructive criticism, and continuing the conversation down below in the comments. That's it for me here. At least we're still somewhat on this platform, but make sure to check out alternatives in, of course, our description to make sure that our voice could never be censored or deleted. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.